when I compare ourselves with the regional countries. Why I like to compare with regional countries, because it gives us a kind of measurement to say how are we faring against other competitors. Be that as it may, I have put a slide that speaks to, first of all, maybe manufacturing sector. Now, manufacturing is one of the now largest contributor to GDP. When I looked at the trend analysis, at around 15% of GDP, it's quite significant. However, when one starts to look at the contribution towards exports, we see a little bit of weaknesses there. At around $500 million, which is 6% of total exports, I think there is a room to say how best do we position ourselves so that we can support manufacturing. In my view, manufacturing should be doing at least $1 million as a start. So we need to redouble in terms of our export performance when I look at that. So there are a lot of other issues which have been spoken about around manufacturing. Having said that, I went to government expenditure pattern and revenue. So I've just touched various aspects of the economy. So I went to revenue performance over a period of time. I know there have been periods also when we've been affected by the El Nino weather pattern, but also when you look at my bottom line of the graph, it shows the transitions that we have gone through from a currency perspective. US dollar era, RTGS, ZWL, ZIG, and so on and so on. So we have transitioned over time in terms of the currency regimes. But I think what is also clear for me is that when I look at the revenue, from 2025, over 10 years, we have doubled the revenue. But also expenditures seem to be outpacing revenue growth. So in as much as we have grown from a revenue perspective, our expenditures remain key. I think they remain problematic. So I think this is a common theme that I saw over a period of time. Revenue growth, very strong, but also expenditures seem to be outpacing. So it's one of those key areas to say, how best do we do it? From an expenditure perspective, I realize that there are also external factors that have affected us. For example, the withdrawal of US aid. In this case, I've given African economies that were dependent or that were benefiting from the US aid. And Zimbabwe in 2024, I think we received roughly about $340 million. But I've given a trend analysis in terms of the US aid and where most of that has been directed towards health, humanitarian, and maybe a government aspect. So what it means is the declining of or withdrawal of part of this US aid. It means it will exert pressure on the government fiscus. So it's one of the aspects that we see coming through to say, if this US aid assistance is significantly reduced, it again puts pressure on the government to say, how best do you accommodate that aspect of the spending pattern?
The import of the conversation we're having is, how do we unlock this GDP? How do we get everybody to benefit from this GDP? I hadn't seen James's presentation, but it has struck me that our numbers at 53 billion are very significant. And if I'm to be fair, Honorable Minister, I quizzed the IMF and the World Bank on how accurate these numbers are. And they're very accurate. It's quite remarkable to collect $8 billion in taxes. And I think we have to congratulate government, we have to congratulate industry and all the other players for their efforts to get us here. When you look at the high-level numbers, if you are able to grow GDP, double it in 5-6 years as we saw, that's remarkable. In my entire working life, and I started working in the early 90s, I don't remember a single-digit inflation. So again, we congratulate our government for their efforts to getting us here. And below 5% in April, this is quite remarkable. Honourable Minister, I'm not going to have a very technical opening remarks because we've got a lot of technocrats coming up. I'll just talk about some of the high-level things that are concerning us right now. Ease of doing business, we welcome the ease of doing business efforts that have been led by the Ministry of Finance working together with the World Bank and in association with the stakeholders. We understand that there are transitional issues that may be arising, and we would like to see an allocation towards the transitional mechanism. We recognize that overnight you're going to reduce the incomes of a lot of organizations. And if we don't manage that transition properly, if we don't put resources towards that transition, we may not get to where we want to be. We're keen to be part of that conversation if there's room for us, but we understand that it may cost money for us to do that. The conversation we welcome around de-dollarization. We welcome that. It's a key issue for all the members in the room, as I'm sure it is for you in government. We welcome the milestones that have been outlined. We would like to see those go into legislation. And we feel that the 2030 date might be a noose that we've placed around our own necks, which is not necessary. So we would like government to consider legislating the milestones and moving away from the date.
What you will find in that NDS2 document is 10 pillars. These 10 pillars are the drivers of economic growth and transformation. So you've got, is there a summary of the pillars somewhere? I'm sure there is. Let's get to the pillars. So macroeconomic stability, colleagues have referred to that. Inclusive growth, infrastructure, housing, food security, agriculture, and the climate and environment, those kind of things. The digital economy and human capital development, creating jobs, making growth more inclusive, devolution, making sure that those in the provinces can contribute to choosing the projects that will change their lives. Social development, gender issues, building the image of the country. What media is doing now is part of that a growth story which is driving the pillar of image building and communication, and then governance, peace and security. I always say that if you think peace is expensive and you don't want to finance security forces, try war. It's more expensive. So the minister gave them too much budget. No. You did it for peace. So these are the drivers of growth that we've identified through NDS2, and the budget is trying hard to finance these drivers of growth, for which then ministries are then mapped onto each of these pillars. And also the incentives that were put in place, the various taxes and so forth, also can be mapped to these pillars very, very easily. So I really wanted to start there and make that very, very clear. My second point really is on the slides. Please, all those slides that you present, I want all the slides. Nice. All of them. Beautiful slides, a very good detail. I really love your slides, all of them without exception. I want those slides today. Let me start with the presentation. Was it Mukoko? Mukoko, did I get it right? Dinash, on whether are we growing or not. And his analysis shows that we are growing. It's very clear. So I don't understand why anyone would even doubt that we are growing. We are growing. You know, but there's someone out there is doubting that. You see, a little bit of economics, macroeconomics 101. There are three ways to compute GDP and its growth, right? There's what you call an incomes approach, then an expenditure approach, then a value-added approach. Those three should largely align. So by choosing delta as an example to show that's 0.82% correlation between delta sales growth and GDP, that really speaks to the big consumer goods, right? The consumption approach to GDP. So he's correct. Yeah. So consumption approach shows that the GDP is nothing other than private consumption plus investment plus government expenditure minus taxes plus X minus M, which is exports minus imports. Remember it from first year economics? Anybody? Y is equal to CIG minus T plus X minus M. You remember it? That's expenditure approach. Because we are basically changes Siegu incomes approach. Incomes approach recognizes four factors of production. Profits from capital, wages from labor, we have rent from property, and then we have interest from financial capital. And then again, you have to add the difference between taxes and subsidies. That's an incomes approach. So again, if you look at that delta analysis, the fact that the internationals pick the obviously sales, that speaks to the profits element of that. You could have done wages, you could have done, yeah. And then there's, I won't go into the VAT approach, that's too much of a lecture now.